So on the last video that I posted, I asked you guys, do you want me to vlog or to also post tutorials on how to code? And most of you said I should do both. I should vlog and also post coding tutorials. So that's what we're gonna be doing. We are gonna be building a full stack application. Let me think. Let's create a social network together, guys. Just a smaller nyana. Let me focus. I should buy a video editing course on Udemy because my camera skills, guys. Right, cool. So we're gonna be building a social network together. We're gonna be using .NET on the back end and Angular on the front end. Enjoy. Right, so I've got a class diagram of what we are going to be building. So the app that we're going to build is called the Poetry Social Network. It's pretty much self-explanatory. It's a social network for poets. So these are the schemas, database schemas that we will have. We will have a poet, aka the user, and the properties for each user are going to be the ID, the email, the password, and the full name. And then each and every poet can have many poets. So one poet can have many poems. Yeah. So each poem will have an ID, a poet's ID, a title, and a content. So this is not a video about databases and the relationships between tables. I'm assuming you guys know what these symbols are. So this here pretty much means one poet can have many poems, and then each poem, this poem belongs to one poet. And then each and every poem will have a comment and a like. So one poem can have many comments, but the comment belongs to one poem. And then again, a poem can have many likes, and each like belongs to a poem. And then we need to keep track of who commented, where does the poem belong, where does the comment belong. So these properties will help us track that. So each comment will have an ID, it will have a poem ID to link the comment to a poem. It will also have a poet's ID to link the comment to a user, as well as the content, what the text for the comment. And then we also have a like, and then same thing applies. The like will have an ID. It will belong to a user. We'll use it will belong to a poem, so we use the ID of the poem to track the relationship. And then the like will also belong to one user, so we will use the poet ID. Yeah, so that's pretty that's what we're going to be building. It's a very simple app. I do not want to waste more time on explaining what the app is or trying to explain the relationship. I'm assuming that you guys know what relationships are, the basics of databases. So what I want to do is I'm gonna first create these tables with the relationships, and then I'm gonna jump to the front end and create the user interfaces using mock data, and then we'll come back and properly build the back end. Cool. So go ahead and open your Visual Studio and create a new project. By the way, you can use VS Code. I just prefer using Visual Studio because it's pretty convenient when you want to build .NET applications. Right, so you want to select ASP.NET Core Web API and press next. let us call this put this here. Let's call it gonna call it Poems API, and I'm gonna use let's just use .NET Core 3.1. The reason why I'm selecting 3.1 is I want to make a video to properly introduce .NET Core 5 to you guys. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I am going to add another project in here, and it's gonna be a class library, and I'm gonna call it data layer, or let me just call it data. What the hell is this now? Yes, okay. Okay, yeah. So this is where our models, our view models are gonna live, and our context. So basically the connection to our databases, to our database. This is gonna be responsible for connecting to the database, basically, in a nutshell. So I'm gonna add a folder. I'm gonna call this models, and remember we've got a poet. So now we're creating those tables. We're creating this. So we have a poet, we have a poem, we have a comment, and like right. So make sure to let me increase the size. Cool. I hope that is big enough for you guys. So first of all, we need to make this public, and then we need to add those properties. So we had the ID, and then we had the email. So this is going to be a string. We've got the email, and then we also need the this is going to be a string as well. We need the full name, and what else do we need? We need the string. It needs to be a password. Cool. So this is all we need for the poet, and then another model that we need is the poem. Don't forget to make this public as well. And then we need an ID, and we also need a what do we have here? Let me check. ID, poet ID, title and content. Okay, let me first add the title and the content. So we need a string for the title, and we need another string for the content. So let me talk about relationships now. So according to the UML diagram, one poet may have many poems. So we need to have a list of poems here for each and every poet. So this is where the relationship comes in. So let's call this poems. Poem. Yes. Save that. So this is gonna be a list, and here each poem will have a poet ID. So let's call the poet ID, and then we need, it's called a navigation property if I'm not mistaken. Poet. So what will happen here, entity framework will see this poet ID, and it will look at this line and say, okay, I've got a poet ID and I've got a poet here, therefore this is the primary key to this class here, therefore it is a foreign key to this class. I hope that makes sense. What else do we need? We need a comment. Again, we need to make this public. And it needs an ID. And it also needs a comment will belong to a poem. So we need a poem ID, and we need that navigation property, poem. It also needs a poet ID. Now remember, each and every user in this application is a poet. So everyone is called a poet here. I'm trying to resize the window here. Okay, so you can't resize while you're recording. Okay. So let's call poet ID. I hope you guys can actually see this. Just trying to make my screen a bit smaller because this monitor is a big ass one. Okay. We also need a poet. Alright, so we've got a poem ID, the poem. Now we need a content. It's gonna be a string. I think we have everything. Let me confirm here. Oh, it needs we haven't, okay, a poem needs a title. We haven't added that for the poem. No, let's go back to the poem, and we need we do have a title. All right, cool. So we also need a like. Let's make this public as well. And the like will have an ID. It'll also have an ID, right, for poem ID, the foreign key. And a poem, and who liked this poem. So it's going to be the poet ID. And we need a poet for entity framework. Cool. So I think we are done with this. So let me just a quick recap. We've got a poet, and the poet have got these properties here: the email, the full name, the password, and they have a list of poems. And then we have a poem. Each poem is an ID. It has a title. It has a content. And then we need a way to link the poem to a poet. So we are using the poet ID as the link. So it's this, when we are creating the migration, this is going to be a foreign key in SQL. So this will point to the poet. And then we have got a like as well. We need a way to link the like to a poem, and also to link it to the poet. Same applies to the comment. So we are done with our models. I think I need to let me just go ahead and add the DP context. So we are going to add another class. We are going to call this poem DP. Let's make this public. And we need this, and then we need to, first of all, we need to add some Nugget packages to this project, to the data project. So I'm gonna browse and I'm gonna pause while this loads. So I'm gonna go ahead and search here for entity framework. We need to find entity framework core, and I'm gonna select this version here, and I'm gonna install this one. I also need I think I need this package as well, entity framework core design. I'm going to install the same version as the previous one. I'm going to accept. I also need SQL Server and tools. Let's install this. Install. Accept. Lastly, I'm going to add tools. Nice. Right, so that's done. I am gonna come back to the DP context, and I'm gonna inherit from the DP context here, and I'm gonna show potential fixes. Yeah, we need to use this. Yeah, that's why. So this, we just installed this to this project. Right, cool. So, and we need to call the constructor of DP context, and we need to pass options here. So I'm just gonna do this. Need to write DP context options. These are going to be the options, and we need to pass them to the constructor. And then we need to define our classes here. We need to list our classes. So what entity framework will do, it'll take these models here and convert them into classes. So it'll look for the tables. I mean, it'll take these models here and convert them into tables. I think I said that right. So in order for that to happen, we need to tell the entity framework which classes do we wanna add to our tables in SQL. Right, so we need to do this. Let's say public dbset, and we need to pass the type here. So let's start with the poet, and this is gonna be the name of the table. I want it to be called poets, and we need a getter and a setter here. It doesn't know what a poet is, so we need to import models, and then we also need a public dbset of a command so it's usually gonna be in plural form. So your table names have to be in plural form because you've got a list of this basically. So one comment, when in plural, it's gonna be called comments. And then a poet, when you have many poets, you have poets. Okay, set. We need a get and a set. Guys, I need a new keyboard. This one is sure public dbset. We also need a like, and the table name is going to be called likes, and get and we set. What else do we need? We need a poem. Public dbset poems. Get set. So as you can see, guys, the order doesn't matter. You see, if I like, I can have this right at the end. It doesn't matter. Right, so we have basically our database tables ready. So this is all we need to do. The next thing, don't forget to save, guys. Don't forget to save. So the next thing that we want to do is we need to set up our database, connect to our database. So that's going to happen here. We need to set a connection string, and we need to create a migration that will create a database and add these tables, and we will do that in the following video. Now guys, please don't forget to like, to subscribe, and comment below. It helps me a lot. It will help to grow this channel, and yeah, see you in the next video, guys. Cheers.